I got dozens of emails right out of the gate, people saying, good luck, loved working with you, I want to work with you again. And then people that were saying, hey, let's meet tomorrow for lunch. Let's meet tomorrow for breakfast. I want to introduce you to the CEO. Let's get you, going with this interview process. And I pretty much just said, no, I'm going to do my own thing.
Hey, you're listening to the Friends in Austin podcast. I'm your host, Justin Talent, and every week I bring you the stories of the people of Austin. Thank you for listening. Hey, welcome back to Friends in Austin. My guest today is Dalton Skach, and he has a company called Goldgate, where I guess you can kind of buy shares in real estate, and then the idea is to kind of not live anywhere particular, but own property in different areas and be able to stay there.
Yeah, so you got most of that correct, and so no problem. Thank you for having me. And so what Goldgate is Goldgate is a real estate investment fund manager that acquires luxury real estate throughout the world for the personal use and the financial benefit of the investors in the actual fund, right? So what we do is we syndicate investments from investors or high net worth individuals that would like to own multiple second homes throughout the world. And what we do is we syndicate the money, typically between $50 and $100 million, and then we take that money and we go buy 20 luxury properties throughout the world that these investors are then able to go use and enjoy every single year. After 10 to 15 years of enjoyment, what we do is we sell the properties, dissolve the fund, pay back the investors their principal plus their profit interest. And at the end of the day, these investors will have made money while staying in some of the best properties in the entire world. And that next little piece that we offer is that we offer a liquidity component to our business model as well. So a 10 to 15 year investment is a long time. So definitely a long investment period. And so what we do is for each of the ownership interests, the shares in the fund, there's 100 shares in the fund. For each of them, what we do is we securitize them using blockchain technology and offer a secondary marketplace where these investors can sell their shares similar to selling their Tesla or Peloton stock whenever they would like.
Interesting, really interesting. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. For one, where did you get this idea? Where did it come from? And how did you get started on it?
So May of last year, I came back from traveling. I was in Brazil and I started Goldgate. And originally Goldgate was going to do commercial real estate investment in high growth markets in Texas. And after a few months, after I started learning more about blockchain technology and how to provide liquidity to real estate, I made a pivot in August of last year. And then as of recently, over the past month, we made the new pivot to where we are now. And so there's already a company in this industry, in this niche, in the luxury real estate fund niche called Equity Estates. So Equity Estates is a 15-year-old company. They typically raise between $30 and $50 million from a few dozen investors throughout the world, and they buy properties in that $2 to $5 million range. And so it already exists. They just had their best quarter ever in Q4 2020. The problems with Equity Estates are, first, it's their fees. The next thing is their liquidity. And the third thing is their brand awareness. So for their fees, they take 20% off the top. So if anybody's listening and they're a real estate fund manager or they invest in commercial real estate or residential real estate, 20% off the top is kind of unheard of. It's usually between like 2%, maybe a little bit more, maybe even a little bit less. And so they take 20% off the top, a 1% annual asset management fee, and they take 20% on the back end again. So their fees are a real problem, but they're able to do that because they're the only company in that space. There's no other competitor with them. The next problem is their liquidity. So if it's year 3, year 4, year 5, and you want to sell your ownership interest to pay for an unexpected occurrence, right? Maybe you want to pay for your son's wedding or whatever might happen. You have to wait a few months for them to find a new buyer for your shares, and then you need to pay them an 8% liquidity fee when the buyer is found. So there's not very much liquidity. And then that last thing is their brand awareness. They're a 15-year-old company, but they refuse to raise money from outside capital. They bootstrap pretty much and they grow organically. But the problem with that is that they're unable to go out and expand their operations quicker, reach more people, do more funds, and inevitably make more money.
Okay, so I want to go back a little bit because as someone who's not really familiar with too much of the stuff you're talking about, as I mean, probably many of the people listening, I want to go back to just the idea of being able to invest in real estate in this way. So the people that you serve and the people that this competitor now serves, people that have a lot of money and want to put it into real estate,
Yes.
into a fund. So
Yes.
I guess, I mean, the benefit of that is like any other fund. I mean, instead of having to go and find a particular place and put your money on that, people are finding those real estate assets for you. They're deciding what to put into the fund, and then you trust them, you buy into the fund, and you hope to see a return, right?
Yeah, exactly. So with other funds, right, in the commercial real estate space and the investment space, usually you invest in a fund, but you do it for financial purposes solely. You do it to get a dividend every quarter. You get it for property appreciation. And you also get it for the tax benefits of the depreciation. Now, with us, you're investing mainly for the personal use, but also the property appreciation on the back end. So when you invest in our fund, you're not getting a quarterly dividend or anything like that. What you're getting is 6 weeks of allocated time per year to go use these 20 luxury properties.
Okay. So the kind of the value proposition for it is you get places to stay.
Yes.
You get to gain, your asset gains in value while you own it and
Yes.
use it, and then later you get to sell that.
That's correct.
Yeah. So how did you go about building that company? Because I mean, you got to get people with a lot of money involved, and I mean, it just seems like a kind of a huge undertaking.
Yeah, so in April is when we're going to be publicly announcing our first flagship fund, which is going to be our $100 million luxury real estate fund. With that $100 million, we'll be buying 20 luxury properties throughout the world. We intend to have a debt ratio around 20%. So we'll have about $120 million of purchasing power divided by 20. So 20 properties is going to be an average value of about $6 million, right, per property. And to kind of give you an idea about the market demand for this, so as I mentioned to you previously, the demand for equity estates just had their best quarter ever in Q4 2020. But in addition, the demand for second homes increased 100% year over year, mostly due to the pandemic. More people want more homes. The next thing is that there were more high net worth individuals created last year than there was in any other year in history.
Oh, really?
And 1/4 of high net worth individuals throughout the world intend to buy more residential real estate in 2021. And in terms of creating this company, right? I mean, what we're doing is we just took an existing model, took the perfect timing of this, and then we're also using just new technology in order to create more liquidity. And we have a better kind of go-to-market strategy. So for instance, not only is there liquidity, but we also have that blockchain component to it. And investors are also able to invest using fiat or cryptocurrency. So we just had thousands and thousands of newly minted millionaires from this recent crypto boom, Bitcoin boom, everything. And so now they actually have an opportunity to use that crypto to invest in something that they can go use, right? Use your $1 million of crypto, go live in, 20 $6 million homes throughout the world, right? So we're taking advantage of that. And then the last part that I wanted to bring up is that we have a sustainability component to our business as well. So Goldgate is a public benefit corporation with a focus towards property sustainability. And so when we are acquiring these properties, we produce a sustainability benchmark report to understand how much energy we're using and how we can improve. And then in all of our quarterly updates going after, we show how we've reduced that energy consumption. And right when we go in and acquire the property, we go in and invest in LED lighting, AI monitored HVAC systems, smart thermostats, etc. So it's better for our customers and our planet and just the experience itself.
That's really cool. So how exactly are you using blockchain? I watched some blockchain videos before you came here, and I mean, I had some familiarity with it. I have a better understanding now, but how is Goldgate utilizing blockchain?
Yeah, so of all of the uses that you could use blockchain for, I would say that tokenizing something is probably the most simple thing. I mean, you or I, or mainly my CTO, he could create tokens, blockchain tokens for any kind of asset on his phone very, very quickly. So we're not creating a new protocol or anything. We're not doing DeFi. We're not doing any of that stuff. So all we're really doing is think about it in the traditional aspect as you buy 100 shares of Tesla, right? Do you print that out? Do you have like something that like shows, hey, I have 100 shares and I'm going to go sell them to my friend by having him sign the PDF or anything like that? It's like, no, you have 100 digital shares of Tesla that you can see on your Vanguard account, whatever it might be. It's the same aspect here. The tokens, all they are is digital shares.
Okay. And so then that allows them to, through an application on their phone, kind of look at what shares they have in what. And
yeah, well, they just own shares in the fund, and the fund owns all these properties. So directly, they own just ownership interest in all of these properties. If they buy 1% of our fund, they own 1% of all the properties that we acquire.
Okay, so when you formulated this idea, I mean, first it's just you, right? I mean, you come up with the idea for the company.
Yes.
I mean, how did you get people involved in it, and did you need to get funding or anything like that?
So from my past business successes that I had with Goldgate version 1, I was able to fund this business myself from May until January of this year. In January, we started having traction with our old business model. We were able to go out and raise a round from family and friends, bring on more people onto the team. Then we had this new pivot. We're going to be going out and raising money in April and May once we've gone out and built some more traction. And by building traction, I mean getting letters of intent to invest in our fund.
When you go around like pitching this to people, you know, because you need to get them to invest in the fund. I mean, what is your strategy? How are you finding these people and like getting them on board? I mean, is it they just understand your pitch and they're like, yeah, it sounds good?
Yeah. So first, when we made this pivot, it was only as of recent. It was last month, right? So it's a very recent new business model. And so we've had to go out, talk to our attorneys, start getting the documents formed for the fund itself so we can go out and start pitching this to investors, to high net worth individuals. But in terms of our go-to-market strategy, we're going to be using paid advertisements in a lot of these publications that high net worth individuals read, such as Mansion Global and Forbes and also CoinDesk. You know, those first two, all it's going to be all that we'll be doing is announcing our $100 million luxury real estate fund, which will actually be the largest luxury real estate fund that's ever been announced or done. So that'll be the first thing. We're high net worth individuals all over the world that they're already on Mansion Global and they're already looking for their next second home, and they only spend a typical 4 to 6 weeks in these homes every single year. So this is the opportunity for them to spend 6 weeks out of the year in multiple homes throughout the world and not need to maintenance anything, right? And so we'll be announcing that in Mansion Global, but we'll also be announcing in CoinDesk and Cointelegraph, talking to those newly minted crypto millionaires and showing them, hey, this is a way for you to invest your crypto into ultra luxury real estate all throughout the world in one transaction. So those are going to be our two go-to-market strategies. After we've gone out and announced, then we intend to go get industry and strategic partnerships, whether it be with institutions and family offices or even real estate brokerages or other companies in the crypto and blockchain space. We've already been speaking with a few of those highly valued, very, very highly valued crypto lenders and other companies in the blockchain community. So just through paid advertisements and strategic partnerships, we intend to go out and syndicate these 100 shares, these 100 investors for our fund. Cool.
And then, so how are you deciding what properties that you buy up here? Who determines that?
And that's just a perfect question. I'm really glad that you asked it, as we get it from investors, and investors typically just love the answer to this because with our competitor, they do some polling with their investors, but overall, you can see on some forums even where this company will just go out and buy properties in locations that they just think people want to go live in, right? So as I mentioned before, 100 shares, around 100 investors. If everybody bought one share, some people might want to buy more weeks. So they might buy 2 or 3 shares, whatever it might be. But let's just say there's 100 investors. So before people invest into this fund, there's going to be 20 properties. There's going to be 4 different categories with 5 properties in each category so that they know what lifestyles will be investing in, right? So there'll be that ski and mountain category. There'll be that beach and island category. There'll be that gateway city category, like Los Angeles and New York City and stuff like that. And then there'll be that mixture category of leisure and experience, right? Maybe even like a Pebble Beach kind of golf course experience kind of category. So after we've gone out and we have told our investors all these different categories and lifestyles, once we've syndicated the money from all of the investors, what we're going to be doing is for each category, presenting to our investors 25 different locations for each category. And not only showing them the pictures and the video and the language and the currency, but also showing them what population growth has been like and also the average growth of property values in these areas. And we're going to let our investors choose their top 5 favorite locations in each of these categories. And at the very end, we'll be able to pretty much democratize the process for the locations. And then as well, our investors will also know that these properties will be built in the past 10 to 15 years. And for the selection of the properties, they're going to pretty much just have to trust that we're choosing the right architecture and feel for each of these locations.
That's pretty cool. So it seems like there's going to be one I want to say it's kind of like Airbnb Lux, but with equity.
You know what? So the competitors in this industry, right? You have Airbnb, VRBO. They are not really a direct competitor. They're a service and mainly their main bread and butter is people that are spending maybe $50 to $100 a night and they're traveling or whatever it might be. Their Lux program and Plus program is definitely gaining some steam. But at the end of the day, when you use Airbnb, when you use VRBO, when you use Cuvée, you use Inspirato, you use Third Home, you give them your money. And do you ever go to Airbnb and go, oh, hey, can I have some of my money back? No, you give them your money, it's gone forever. 100% of it is gone, right? Then you have those 2 other companies that are in our industry, which is Picasso, and then you have Equity Estates. So those companies, at least they offer you the ability to go out and make your money back over the long term, right? So, and to kind of give you an idea, each investor in this fund also has to pay their share of the annual operating expenses, which is going to be around 4.5% to 5% of their investment amount. So around $50,000 per year. And so again, there's 42 days within each year that you're able to go use these properties. So the average price per night is going to be around $1,200 per night. Now you can only imagine and guess what would the cost be to go stay in a $6 million Aspen home per night, right? It's not $1,200 per night. It's probably around $10,000 per night, maybe $5,000, $7,500, $10,000. Same thing in Monaco, same thing in Nice or whatever it might be throughout the world. So not only will you be making money on these properties, but you also be saving a whole lot of money when you're traveling. You'll be saving 50 to 75% more on your stays.
I think it's a super interesting idea. I mean, it sounds awesome actually. Now, but it sounds like there's got to be a booking element to it because people need to share certain spaces at certain times. So you're going to have to write basically some Airbnb style code. And you guys working on that?
Exactly. So in terms of creating the platform, so in this next month in April, we'll be raising money not only for the Goldgate fund, but also the Goldgate enterprise, right? The operations of the business. And so part of that money is used for product development and creating that scheduling piece as well. In terms of the investor management piece, in terms of the document sharing, in terms of selling your shares, we're going to be using a white labeled platform that's already in the digital asset space that works with funds already. So that can already be done. That's not a problem. But the scheduling piece, right, that's going to be something that we have to build and customize. And that won't take too much time. It's not like we're creating something groundbreaking. It's a scheduling app, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know a guy that rents some Airbnbs in town, and he doesn't like Airbnb that much. But basically he's talking about how complex is Airbnb software? And I'm like, it's not that complex. I mean, other than the fact that a lot of people use it, that adds complexity, but it's like, you just need to have listings and then it's calendars and
Exactly. And so, exactly. So going out and creating that product development, that infrastructure, that's not going to be a big deal. And in terms of the amount of time that we give each of these investors, we purposely make sure that the properties are 40% vacant throughout the year to give investors more, to make sure that people aren't unnecessarily using their days when they don't need to use their days, and to also make sure that there is some time slots available in a lot of these properties. And we also do a lottery twice a year. So for those really, really important weeks, right? Aspen, X Games, Monaco Grand Prix, right? Stuff like that. So that every year people, if they wanted to get into those places during those times, they have the ability to do so.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, because I mean, during those popular times, everyone's going to want it at that time, but only so many people can. You have to resolve that somehow.
And that's why we're doing these categories too. Like with equity estates, they do have their own categories, but each of their funds is a little bit different. And so by mixing all of the categories kind of together into one fund, what it allows us to do is that if somebody tries to go and book, for instance, Christmas in Aspen, but it's taken, well, they still have the other choices of going maybe to Whistler or going to Jackson Hole, going to the French Alps or whatever it might be. So it's like, hey, I didn't get Aspen, but I got the French Alps. I'll have a good year still.
Yeah,
whatever it might be. And, but then maybe, or then same thing with the islands or whatever. So we make sure that there's a very similar lifestyle. So if you can't get a specific place in a specific time, there's a lot of other options.
Yeah. So with this company and going forward, what do you see? Like, what are the things that you're worried about that'll be the hardest to solve? Is there any particular problems that you're more concerned with than others?
I think what we would like to find out, and that we will find out in April and May, is we already know that there's a demand for second homes. We already know that the business model already exists and is doing really well. So now we need to go out and attract investors, specifically within the customer segment that we think is going to be doing the best, which is these early crypto millionaires, but also with family offices and maybe even venture capitalists. This is something that your company could invest in and even write off the annual expenses and use the properties for events or whatever it might be, or for a gift, to a family member, whatever it might be. So we're really excited to see what the demand is going to look like for our product, for our offering. And we think it's going to gain a lot of attention. As I mentioned before with our competitor, they're a company that's been around for 15 years and a lot of people don't even know about them. Right.
Yeah. I didn't even know about this category until,
Exactly. So they have terrible brand awareness within their niche. And then also, I think, in this industry, when you go stay at, for instance, a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons, you go out and you tell your friends and you're super excited. You're like, stay at the Ritz-Carlton. It was lovely. It was perfect. But when you're investing in another product like our competitors, where you have to pay 20% up front, anybody that is privy to finance or real estate is going, what are you talking about? That is not something you want to share with people. So their word of mouth, I don't think is that great. And then also just their not having that liquidity piece is a big thing to people as well. And
the liquidity piece is the ability to sell part of your ownership at any given time.
Exactly, right? So you bought one share for $1 million. Every quarter we do a net asset value report showing what the value of all of our properties are worth, right? And technically what the value of your share is worth. And then so if in 2 or 3 years you go, hey, the $100 million fund is now worth $120 million. Now I can sell my $1 million share for $1.2 million on the secondary market to somebody throughout the world that wants to get into this fund, right? That didn't get on the initial offering and now they want to get in.
And all those exchanges would be made on your platform, right?
No, so those are already done. Those are already white label.
Okay, right? That's the white label platform.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's not something that we're going to be going out and creating. There's already platforms for this where there's already thousands of accredited investors that already exist, right? So there's no need for us to go and create this new ecosystem when it already exists and it's affordable, right?
Gotcha. So how, you said this competitor, they're charging 20%. I mean, you guys have to make money. How do you see yourself making money, and at what point in the process are you charging people?
Yeah, so we charge 5%, so upfront. So there's just 20% upfront, ours is 5%. So we're 1/4 of our competitor. And so off a $100 million fund, we would make $5 million up front. Now that's for, our staffing, our legal, our fund formation, our customer acquisition, and our brand awareness too, and also going out and doing more funds in the future. Then we make a 1% annual asset management fee, and then we take 2.5% on the back end. Remember, they take 20% of the profits on the back end. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be making money not only through these fees for each fund, but going out and doing more funds that are specific towards specific lifestyles, like a golf fund, right? An island fund, a European fund. So somebody will be able to go, hey, I want to buy $1 million worth of equity in this fund, $1 million here, $1 million here. we even have plans in the future to introduce other asset classes, whether it be commercial real estate or fine art or whatever else it might be.
Yeah. So what your overhead then is, of course, whoever you need to hire to run your team, property management companies to maintain the properties, right? Because someone's got to go in there and clean up and make sure that if something breaks, it gets fixed.
That's right.
And then, is that really about it? Is there any other big expenses?
It's the main expenses are the staffing, as you just mentioned, for Goldgate itself, and then also our customer acquisition, going out and getting more customers so that we can create that liquidity within our platform too, and then go out and do more funds. And then we have that legal piece. But as you mentioned, we have that 1% annual asset management fee that covers our costs, but that also covers our property management and concierge services for each of these properties, so that we can give our clients the best experience, give them that Ritz-Carlton Four Seasons experience. Other than that, there's not much technology that needs to be developed, right? Not much at all. So that's pretty much it.
Cool. So I want to go back and talk about what you've done prior, because you mentioned you had some other entrepreneurial experience. And I thought I saw that did you go through Y Combinator?
So I did the YC Startup School, and I also did the Draper University program, and I just applied for my second time over at YC. So I hope I get into this, the summer program, the summer cohort. That would be great. And
so people that don't know, the YC is like possibly the oldest incubator, right?
I think it's the top and the biggest, and most likely the best accelerator program in the entire world.
Yeah, it's like the most prestigious, and it might be the oldest too. So like they also have Hacker News is a popular basically news listing that a lot of programmers use, and it's news.ycombinator.com. But anyway, I used to go to that all the time, and that's actually the first time I ever saw anything about Bitcoin was on that site, and it was really early. It was like you could still
News?
you could still mine it, like yeah. And unfortunately, I did not mine it. I read the article and I was like, I started setting it up and then I left, and then I never did it.
Yep. I mean, who could have known, right? I mean, like, I was talking to my buddy about this and some of our investors, and I was just like, going into 2020, who would have, even going into 2021, who would have known that the Browns would be going to the playoffs and Bitcoin would be at 50,000, right? It's just like mind blowing.
It's been wild. So, did you got into Y Combinator previously, or was there some subset of Y Combinator that you're talking about?
So YC actually has one of the best startup school programs there is. It is nuts. I mean, it's free, first of all. They have excellent curriculum. They have an awesome co-founder matching tool. And so I just went through it, and I just learned a lot. But it's a free program. Anybody can join. With the Draper University program, you did have to be selected and pay a fee to get in and all that stuff. That was also an insane program.
Okay. Where did you grow up at?
I grew up in Reno, Nevada.
Reno, Nevada?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Y Combinator, they only do it in California, right?
So in terms of their accelerator programs, typically they do, but now because of the current environment, they are doing virtual too. Mm-hmm. So last year, I think they did virtual. This year, they're doing virtual until further notice. I think maybe even in summer it might change, but it's also, again, they're in San Francisco, so they're not like Texas.
Were you always interested in real estate, or is that something recently?
So I got into real estate when I was 20 years old, and my dad actually recommended that I get like my real estate broker's license when I was in Colorado. And I went out, I got my real estate broker's license, did residential real estate for a little bit, went back to college, joined the commercial real estate program over at University of Colorado Boulder. They actually had a commercial real estate team that would go out and travel across the country and compete versus other universities from around the world. And so for 3 semesters, I did that. And so when I graduated from university, I had so much experience of knowing the financials and the marketing and what makes something valuable in commercial real estate.
How would they compete?
It was great. So what they would do is they would give us a case study, right? So they would say, they give us a building to invest in, or they'd give us a development to go do. And so we'd have to analyze the tenants in the building, for instance. We'd have to analyze how old it was, what improvements needed to be done, what we could sell it for in the future, how much money we're going to need to raise from investors, how much we're putting in ourselves, and market demand for that kind of space, do all of this stuff. And so not only was it the analysis, but it was also the presentation, because what we had to go do is in each competition, we would be pitching versus industry leaders in that market. So in Los Angeles, in Denver, or even in Las Vegas, you'd have the top dogs in their industries that just make, over $1 million a year easy just in their salary. And they'd be the ones judging these college students, and you'd be pitching them pretty much asking them for money, right? For a fake case. And then after you did your presentation, they would question you and your team, and then you just had to be ready for it.
That sounds really fun.
It was so much fun. I was even in a fraternity in college, and doing this was more fun than anything at that fraternity. It was so much fun. And one of my best friends, probably my best friend, I met through that program.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So then you got into real estate in college, and where did you go from there? Why entrepreneurship? What got you into that?
So I started my first business 6 months after college, and typical kind of millennial thing was just worked for a small boutique development and real estate brokerage firm, said, hey, I can do this much better than this guy, right? This guy doesn't know how to use his email still, right? Which is a huge problem with people our age and their bosses, right? Their bosses can't do their email or their Excel or any of these technologies. And so I said, hey, I can go out, start my own real estate brokerage and consulting firm and do it better. And when I left my old firm, I let everybody know that I had met at that old firm all these relationships that I was now on the hiring block. And I got dozens of emails right out of the gate, people saying, good luck, loved working with you, want to work with you again. And then people that were saying, hey, let's meet tomorrow for lunch. Let's meet tomorrow for breakfast. I want to introduce you to the CEO. Let's get you, going with this interview process. And I pretty much just said, no, I'm going to do my own thing. And so yeah, that's how it started.
What does a real estate brokerage firm do?
So with what we were doing, originally I was going to go out and do everything, leasing and tenant rep and sales and everything in development or whatever it could be. I was going to do every little thing. And over time, even kind of like this niche, right? As I spoke with people and learned more, I found a niche. And so my niche ended up becoming, I would go out and source off-market acquisitions for these private equity firms throughout the United States that were looking to buy industrial product and multifamily product over $10 million. That was my niche. I didn't sell properties. I didn't lease. I didn't do tenant rep. All I did was I went and found deals that were not available and I made them available.
That's cool. Did it work out well?
It worked out very well. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first, after 9 months, closed an $11 million deal with the largest industrial REIT in the world. 6 months after that, closed an even larger deal for a sale leaseback in the Midwest. And so I'm like 23, just got 2 large checks, working out of my apartment in Denver. And I said, you know what, I can do this from anywhere in the world. So I went and traveled the world for 2 years while I continued to do that. And nobody knew the difference.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Austin?
Brought me to Austin was at the end of 2019. I went on a road trip throughout the United States to try to go find more deals. 2019 was just nuts for real estate. It's even nuts for it right now, but especially for industrial. Try to go shake the tree and find some deals that were going to fall out. At the end of, during that trip, I came to Austin, and it was one of my favorite cities in the country that I had visited. And but towards the end of that trip, I said to myself, you know what, I don't really want to do the broker game anymore. I want to do something else. And I go, you know what, I have a good feeling in my stomach that 2020 is going to be the best year for traveling ever. And I was obviously correct. So I stopped doing that brokerage business. And I said, I'm going to go spend the year traveling around the world, going to be working on myself, maybe go get a master's degree, whatever. Let's go see where life takes me. Spent the first 2 months of 2020 in Nicaragua, the next 2 months in Brazil. I came back in May of last year and started Goldgate.
Cool. So, I guess you didn't have much trouble traveling during the pandemic then.
No, even during the pandemic, in the middle of March is when I was down in Rio de Janeiro, made so many cool friends. They were awesome from all over the world, New Zealand and Europe, and they were great. And then one morning, everybody was just told by their countries, come home. And so even the United States said it, but I'm like, you know what? Everybody's freaking out in the United States at this point. There's no toilet paper. It's cold it's cold in the United States. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to chill on the beach in Rio de Janeiro. Let me know when you guys figure this out. And so I stayed there for a month and a half. Everybody that spoke English left. They just left the country. So I was pretty much I was just alone in a way. Couldn't speak to like really anybody. And so I just kind of worked out, read, kind of did some relaxing. And then just like either the travel bug or the entrepreneur bug in me said, I can't sit around and do nothing anymore. And I saw an opportunity where I said, you know what, we'll probably have a dip here eventually with commercial real estate. And I said, I'm going to go back to the United States. I'm going to go start a commercial real estate investment firm. We're going to invest in high growth markets. We're going to invest in Class A and Class B mixed use properties with multifamily and retail. And we're going to take advantage of the dip. And with
the dip being coronavirus, right?
The dip expected to be coronavirus, right? And so you had, but what I didn't account for was we dropped our interest rates to zero, right? They're non-existent. Also, we printed 40% of our currency in the past 12 months, right? So real estate's a perfect investment for inflation. So prices were going up. There's lots of debt available to go buy these properties. And then we also had the stimulus checks, and we also had the eviction moratoriums. So you couldn't evict tenants. So I said in the middle of August, and I go, you know what? I might have, came here a little bit too soon. We're about probably 12 to 18 months to 24 months out before we might even see anything, right? Because eventually there will be another cycle, right? And so I said, made a pivot to what we're doing now due to the fact that we had everybody wanting to buy second homes, right? And
it just kind of made more sense than commercial at this time.
It made more sense than commercial at this time. It just makes more sense. And then also, when you're raising money for a commercial real estate, even property or a fund, and you're getting debt financing on this commercial real estate, you have to have like a lot of experience that these lenders and institutions, they require of you, right? They require a track record of going out and doing it for decades before. And it kind of inhibits young people from going out and doing it themselves at a young age, even if they're capable of doing so. But the difference between commercial real estate and residential real estate is that commercial is about the percentage that you make, like the cash on cash that you make, the IRR. Or when you buy residential, it's a very emotional feeling, right? So I said, it'd be a lot easier and it makes a lot more sense to go out and raise cash, all equity, for something that is based off of, an emotional attachment, but then also a personal use aspect, rather than having to do the cap rates and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's very, with the commercial, it sounds like it's just very much like how much money can we make, and then just, Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Hey, everyone. This is your host, Justin. I just wanted to thank everyone for listening and give those that are new to the podcast a reminder to please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. If you're on YouTube, please like the video, share it with a friend. That helps us out. Thank you. So is there any place in Austin you like to hang out at?
In terms of my favorite taco shop, it'd have to be One Taco downtown. It's my favorite one. I spend a lot of time over in Barton Springs and then over in Zilker. Again, I've only been in Austin in and out since last August. So I still don't have my favorite spots as of yet.
Yeah, and it's a weird time to move to a new place because things are just different. You can do a lot here now, You
can do a lot here now. I have a car down here, so I've been trying to do some exploring around the huge state of Texas, and once things are more lax, I'll probably go spend some time down in like the Caribbean or whatever it might be. Flights are still extremely cheap. So yeah. I'll probably go do some traveling. I love to do traveling. Do you do a lot of international traveling?
No, I haven't. I'd like to. My girlfriend's really into traveling. She's always like trying to book a trip to somewhere, and I'm just like, let's chill out a little bit. But yeah, no soon international plans. Actually, she does want to go like on basically almost a year travel in a year. Yep. But in like chunks of like 6 weeks. Like we'll go like see New Zealand and Australia since they're close together, and then come back, and then then go maybe to Europe for 6 weeks and bounce around there, just take a section and then come home.
That's a good call. It's a good call. Those 6 weeks to 8 week trips are good. Even doing like 3 month trips are good. I typically did about 6 months of, 4 to 6 months of traveling each time. And then I would go travel, then I would come back, see some family for a month or two, and then I would go back out traveling, right? It would just be one of those things where I'd come back and see my family. One morning I would wake up, Maybe like, oh, I wonder what flights are to Nicaragua. Go on Google Flights and then tell my family, hey, letting you know I need a ride to the airport. I'm flying to Nicaragua next week, right? And that's just how it just was.
That's cool. I mean, when she pitched that concept to me, I was like, oh, that sounds good, because it's like a smaller commitment than like, hey, let's travel for a year. It's like, no, let's go to a section, come home.
Totally. And there's countries and stuff like that are 1 or 2 day countries, like Moldova, right? Moldova is like a 1 day trip. But if you're to go to somewhere like Spain or France or Italy, those are countries that you could spend all 6 weeks in and still probably not see everything, right? Those are just amazing countries to go out and visit and spend a good amount of time in, rather than just bounce around all of Europe too quickly. That's what I would probably recommend, is maybe even splitting it up, where we do three weeks in a bigger country and 3 weeks in another bigger country, or 3 weeks in a big country, and then maybe 2 weeks bouncing around little other places.
That makes sense. So what have your favorite spots been when you're traveling? And also, do you go alone when you travel?
I go alone when I travel. That's just how I prefer to travel. I think in the future, when I have a girlfriend and a fiance, traveling with somebody is a good way to figure out if you're going to be with them a long time. It's definitely like I've had relationships where I've gone out and traveled with somebody, and towards the end of it, it's just like, can you please just delete my number? So definitely, I do it by myself. And then also I want to make these, awesome experiences with my future wife. And so I'm saving some of those romantic travel spots, like Vienna or Venice and the Taj Mahal and the Northern Lights in Paris. I'm saving those for my wife, right? Not even my fiance, but the wife, because I would hate to have a wife and she goes, oh, let's go to Paris. And I'm like, oh, I brought somebody else and it was miserable, and now I broke up with that person, right? So definitely going to those spots, I'm trying to save those for the right person.
That's pretty cool that you're thinking about it that far ahead. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, I just, I've seen a lot of people travel with their spouses too, whether they're dating or something like that, and you just see them and you're just like, gosh, like they're going to be thinking about their trip to, insert name here, right, to Rome, and how when they were here last, all they did was argue with their girlfriend that they're not even dating anymore, right? So I'm just like, I want to avoid that. And then also, I'm a very decisive person. So whenever I'm like, hey, let's go do this, I want to go here, I just want to do it. I don't want anybody holding me back.
So it seems like it'd be difficult to fly into somewhere like Brazil, and then, you don't speak Portuguese and you're traveling by yourself. I mean, what do you do in that situation? Do a lot of them speak English or what?
No, it was super difficult. There's a few countries in the world where I've been unable to properly communicate with the people in English, or in any language, because I was learning Spanish for over 2 months in Nicaragua. And so I went down to like Brazil thinking that maybe they would, speak a little bit Spanish. They understand Spanish, but their whole way they speak is so different. They can understand Spanish. We can't understand anything they say. So Brazil was one of those places where after all of my friends that I had met, after they left, I was pretty much SOL. I was SOL, yeah. All I knew how to say was like bom dia, which is like good morning, and then obrigado, thank you, right? That's literally all I knew how to say.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have to anyone that's looking to start a company or do their own thing?
I would say do it early, and the best investment that you can make is an investment in yourself, right? There's a lot of students graduating from college right now that aren't going to be able to find jobs. And I really respect, like even Peter Thiel has a foundation where when people graduate from high school, he has these students apply to his program. And if they meet the criteria, he'll pay them $100,000 to not go to college, right? And what I've learned, for instance, in the extracurricular real estate program at the University of Colorado, that wasn't even, it was completely separate from the coursework. What I learned there was more than I learned in any other course during that program, right? And the same thing with starting a business. What I've learned since last May until now, it's just not taught in schools, right? And so I would say go out, start a business, start young, learn how to raise money, learn what makes a company fundable, right? And again, make an investment in yourself, and in the long run, it's going to be the best decision you ever made.
I think that's a good way to close it out.
Yep. I think so well. Yep.
Thanks for coming in, Dalton. It was great.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck with Goldgate, man. I'm going to be checking it out and keeping up with it. I want to see how it goes.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.